stars be with you.
All right. Welcome back to the Energetic Principles podcast. We have a very special guest back with us here today. We have Shu Yap, who has joined me all the way from Australia. Thanks for joining me, Shu.
Hi, Mel. Always so great to be back and chatting with you. You are the funniest podcaster I know, especially in the astrology world.
I know it's a dry subject. When it doesn't have to be. Yeah. So, but we're good. We're glad to have Shu back here. She's joined me on the podcast a few times, on a few occasions with, if I try to think of the episodes, it won't come to me, but I know
We
she's
did
been
a
here a
Venus
few times.
retrograde.
Oh, that's right. You're Venus lady. Shu knows a lot about Venus. If you want to study Venus, choose your gal.
Venus is just, it's just so spectacular, isn't it? Just so symmetrical. And I find that people that follow the Venus cycle somehow eventually all get linked up in physical reality in some way. It's bizarre how that happens.
Well, Venus would only have it that way, right? She's like, you have to meet.
It's the sensuality of it.
Have you been watching her in the morning sky?
Yeah, she's so beautiful, just being so elongated from the sun. And I now get up at 4 a.m. and do my work in the morning before I take the kids to school. So she's my one light that I can see when I'm looking out the window. I just go, good morning.
Yeah, I am not up that early to catch Venus, but I am seeing Jupiter every night, and Jupiter is shining bright.
Yeah, that is true. Yes, I do see it before I go to bed. So it's lovely being bookended from your day and nights by, seeing Venus in the morning and Jupiter in the evening. So that's something actually quite special.
Right? Bookended by benefics. What's not to like about that?
Exactly.
I'll take it. Feels very holiday-esque, It's
It does.
So what are we talking about here today? Well, it is almost Capricorn season. Kind of. You'll get this when it's Capricorn season. Shu and I are a little ahead of the game. We're only a third of the way through Sag, and we're recording this a little bit early. Actually, when Neptune is stationing, so caveat, as we are recording this, we have Neptune stationing in the skies, which probably helped Shu and I have a 3-hour miscommunication with when we were going to meet today. She sends me an email. She's like, okay, sorry, I'll be on in 5 minutes. I'm like, 5 minutes? We got 3 hours. And so that's what happens when you calculate for East Coast time versus Pacific time. I'm closer to you, Shu, than you think.
You are. And thank you for being so malleable and flexible and very Neptunian, as you always are. You're always very adaptable, which is a really great attribute, I think, of Mel, being able to shift and shift into different things and conversations. So thank you for that.
Which can only be a testament to a Gemini Mars ruling a Scorpio rising, because otherwise any other Mars, throw some mutable in there and you're like, okay. And it's like, actually, sometimes things work out for the better because now it's earlier. I'll be able to eat on time, which I like, and all is good. All is well. So we are here today to talk all about Capricorn season, Capricorn Solstice season to be exact here. When is it? When does it happen? December 20th. Okay, so just caveat, if we got Australian listeners out there, which might happen with Shu joining me here, know that the dates will probably always be one ahead of what I'm saying. Because that is just the nature of time zones on the planet. But for here, I'm going to be talking about San Diego time, Pacific Coast time. And so we are going to have our Capricorn ingress on December 21st, which is a Thursday, around 7:27 p.m. here. And this is the, official turning point of the seasons, right? We get our bi-yearly solstices. For me, it'll be the winter solstice, but for Shu, it'll be the summer solstice, which always trips me out to think about.
Totally.
So let's just think about solstice in general. and what that energy brings to the table. I'd love to hear it from your point of view, Shu, especially with Capricorn season being your summer solstice. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's just one of these conundrums that we will never be able to resolve. But I think it's really important to look into the symbology of solstices, step up from the material realm and into the fact that, there's a turning point happening. The sun's at its maximum declination, and we have to shift perspective and shift modes in some sort of way. And so for you, it's more darkness, that descends. And no, for me, it's more darkness that descends, even though it never feels like that.
Yeah.
It's more for you, I think, that it always feels really dark. But I guess as a grower, because I do have a farm as well, I always use the solstice as my cutoff date for putting anything in. I just want to try and get all of my plantings done absolutely by the solstice, preferably much earlier, but I'm actually very behind at the moment and I'm still busily planting. So yeah, it's a big shift happening. And so personally, on a personal note, you may feel at some level that you might be changing or shifting a perspective or turning around some plans or something like that. But we're talking very broad archetypal symbolism here. So nothing too specific, but it's more just a vibe, if you know what I mean.
It's a vibe. It is a vibe. And the whole, to speak to what you're saying, Shu, that's the nature of the solstice. Well, any turning of the seasons is it's a pivot point. But the beauty of the solstices is that it's the most extreme pivot point, right? Because it is either the darkest of the dark and the light will return, or vice versa. And so a lot of times just the energy in general can have like that pivot shift that can be rather extreme in nature. And that doesn't have to be like, oh, everything's changed, like just something shifts and then you go another way, or the blockage that was happening for however long now has a resolve, and just the story is pushed to a totally different dimension, which is always nice. Us cardinal signs, speaking as a Cancer sun, Capricorn moon, that's just in my nature. These are the solstice signs, and when I tend to pivot hard. It's not like a gentle pivot. It's not that Aries Libra pivot where it's like, oh, we're just making some tweaks and we're just it's like,
it's the sharp turn.
It is it's the switchback.
Absolutely. And the other thing I was thinking too is that, say, if the sun symbolizes our essence and our identity, and being at its absolute maximum sort of declination, one could say there is more permission to kind of step into the truer, most raw nature of yourselves, during these points. I guess this is the partly where that saying of the veils being thin as well, being at the solstice and equinox points, but particularly the solstices, where we're able to transcend almost the boundaries of the material realm, with the sun being right at the edge. And so that says a little bit about us being right at the edge of our personalities and our sense of identities.
I love that, Shu, especially for this year, because the unique thing about this year's Capricorn solstice, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we get to the actual forecast part, is that Mercury will be retrograde and making its cazimi with the sun. So talking about this sort of liminal, like, messages back and forth, it's a very magical turn of the seasons this year, I think, which I'm going to definitely pick your brain about that. But it's going to add even more to the the dynamic that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, cardinal earth is all about, we're talking about the pivots, initiation. This is an earth sign. So I love the analogy, or not the analogy because it's your life, but that you used of getting your seeds in the ground and making sure that it's, everything's prepared to get the best growth. At the start of the season, which I will be doing too, actually, because I have a garden these days, not to the extent that Shu does, but I have a feeling I am growing tomatoes right now, and
Are you
everybody in the garden is like, how is this possible? How
in
I
winter? That's crazy.
it's been a mild fall here as far as cold wise, and I planted in late August, like just the amount of time, because that's when I got my garden plot. And so they're like, you have to plant within 30 days. And I'm like, we're in between like seasons. What do you want me to plant? Like, I don't
Mm.
know. So I just went with some tomatoes, and they are popping off. Like, I got tomatoes all day long. I got some sweet treats. I got some black cherries. I mean,
Amazing. Well, you've
yeah.
done well for just starting in August.
Right. And so, but I know that tomato train is not going to last forever. So I think I'm going to be with you on the getting everything out by the solstice, and planting those seeds, right? Because this is the turning point to material manifestation. And we're in Saturn's
Mhm.
territory, right? Saturn in Pisces. So what, because we didn't have Saturn in Pisces. Yeah, we didn't have Saturn in Pisces last Capricorn season or Aquarius season. So any thoughts, Shu, on the flavor of Saturn that we're getting for this Capricorn season?
Yeah, it just feels like an island in the middle of the ocean when I think of Saturn in Pisces, that bit of rock, stuck out in the middle of nowhere. And I feel like that sentiment really describes what society has been going through since Saturn's moved in to Pisces in March earlier this year, that nobody really knows what's happening. There's a lot of uncertainty. The stability is somewhat not quite present. But yet we're forced to really be flexible and to try
Mhm.
new things out. And I don't know about you personally, but for me, it's been a lot of like, this is the way we've always done things, but this is not how we need to do things anymore, or we need to try new things, and it feels a little bit uncomfortable, or it feels a bit on edge. And coming back to this solstice, we do have a little bit of that energy there. We do have that sense that it's an unprotected sun. The sun's not particularly happy in Capricorn, and Saturn, its protector, can't help it that much, being powerless himself. Like, there is a relationship though, but not one that's that useful. So
Yeah.
this adds to that whole nature of um, that peregrine nature of just calling the shots a little bit. It's not what's traditionally done, not breaking away from tradition, is like, and having more permission to make a statement about the new you, or the new way things are being done, I think. Even more so, just because there's no strong domicile rulership enforcing its management there.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That right. Because that's a totally different flavor. Like this is essentially the first back-to-back Saturn season that we are receiving that hasn't had that Saturn in domicile, repeatedly
Mm,
getting us for a handful of years time. So there is that erosion quality that you speak
great
of, and
word.
eroding the container, the tradition, the boundaries, the just the structure of like what we're used to, and things feeling a little goopy, like trying to uh trying to feel solid is, especially in time honored things, doesn't feel so solid anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it has that emotional quality to it too, where things just feel off, or they don't feel right, or trying to get your bearings. But what does that look like when you're, floating in mutable waters? And so we kind of just have to go with it. but at the same time, it gives us a really creative container that might not be able to formulate exactly, but it gives enough to, I guess, kind of lead us in what could be the right direction. If it's not, today, then possibly tomorrow, use that loosely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it opens up new pathways. It's like, I love what you said about the erosion, because I'm always dealing with erosion here on our roads and things like that with the big rains, and you get ruts and things like that. But I'm just thinking it's creating new pathways for new things to open up. And I'm thinking that when Saturn was in Pisces, in the 90s, I think that's when I think Toy Story was being released, and it was like big advancements in CGI. I think it was Toy Story. It was one of those movies, but and even Brandon Lee's The Crow was being released, and unfortunately he was killed on set. But they had to really utilize technology in a new way to finish making the movie, as he wasn't able to be acting. So from a destructive, sorrowful event, or these obstacles, come new pathways for creativity or innovation, and that's what Saturn can offer. And this ingress of the sun into a Saturn sign can give us that invitation to do that. To where can we, come up with new ways and innovations of turning things around.
Oh, I love that. Because when I think about mutable natures and peregrine natures, I'm someone who's actually really peregrine, and my chart is that you never know where you're going to end up. Like
Right.
that's the nature of it. It has that wandering quality, and you never know where you're going to end up, and you never know quite how you're going to, make it through, or what's next, or how things will change. But if there's the flexibility within that, things can still formulate and magic can still happen. It just doesn't have the consistency or something that you can like solidly rely on. It's more of like it all just kind of falls together.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can get lessen the rigidity of Saturn and open up to the softness of its Pisces environment.
I love that. So this is where we are. This is where we are with this Capricorn season, which is probably a good rule of thumb, especially since we're going to have Mercury retrograde during it. Be a little flexible there, but Neptune being involved, but we'll talk about all about that. What else is going on? Well, a good portion of the season we're actually going to be under that Sagittarius new moon cycle that is going to be squaring Neptune, and along other things that will be happening there. But there is that sort of loosey-goosey, mutable Jupiterian quality going on, which is also another big thing. We're going to have Jupiter going direct during this season too. And we'll have Mercury stationing direct. We'll also have Chiron stationing direct too. If you're a Chiron follower, that is also happening. So we have 3 planets going direct. We'll have a full moon in Cancer. We're going to have cardinal quarters, which is always big news to me in the cycle, because when we have cardinal quarters, things are initiating, movement is happening, and life is just moving, going along. It's like the wheel turns and there's a dynamicism to the energy to get it going.
Yeah.
So just a couple other notes, we're going to have Mercury, obviously retrograde, and direct in Capricorn and Sagittarius. We'll have Venus in Scorpio and Sag, 2 totally different flavors of Venus. And we're also going to have Mars in Sag and Capricorn. So there'll be, some different vibes throughout the season that we'll talk about here, but I think there is actually a lot to talk about. So why don't we just get in there, Shu, and start looking at the chart? So let's share my screen. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're going to go ahead and share our screens. Shu, you see everything okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we got it set here for the solstice, once again on December 21st, 2023 at 7:27 and 22, if you want those seconds there, p.m. Pacific time. And I guess let's just take a second to look at the ingress chart, only because this is a seasonal ingress, and so it's always good to look at. Well, of course, we'll take away, the angles, just because it really depends on the location to, predict certain things like that. But let's just think about the quality of this time, Shu. What stands out most to you in the ingress chart?
I'm just trying to pull up my notes. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties.
That's okay. Neptune stationing. We get a pass.
Exactly. Exactly. So the ingress chart. Just bear with me. I'm just a bit.
Adjust my light while you're doing that. There we go.
Yeah. Hang on, I've got to get it back, because I actually look at things on my screen because it's a bit too small. There we go. Now, okay, I'm here. So the ingress chart, I'm back. What I'm saying is that there's a very debilitated Mercury because it's moving into trouble, I think. On the ingress, it's stationing retrograde. Not station, it's retrograde, but it's actually moving into a debilitated sign and towards Mars, all under the Sag new moon cycle of a stationing Mercury. So here I see Mercury being pretty prominent in this ingress chart, that it could lead to, I guess, things like technical difficulties, time difficulties, movements. But I mean, in general, things like stress and anxiety, but this frenetic kind of ungrounded energy that one might find themselves in, plans being interrupted, things going haywire. I think we're going to feel that a lot, in this. Well, if this is the ingress chart, it's the quarter. There's a lot of static to me in this chart, and because it's moving in towards, it's in combustion. It gets that cazimi, but it's moving towards Mars, but not only towards Mars, but a square with Neptune. Unfortunately, that is baked into the quarter, and that Mars, Mercury, Neptune combination is, it's not my favorite combination of planets. To me, that's very kind of dodgy and deceptive. There could be maliciousness around lies and truth and things like that. Scams, theft, those sorts of issues could be big themes for the quarter, unfortunately. But you might have a more positive take.
Well, I mean, you gotta call it for what it is. That's the thing. What is the saying? What you see might not be what you get, sort of vibe there. Especially with obviously Mercury being in the condition it's in, combusts so close to the sun, coming off the sextile with Saturn, but also the moon's trining the sun perfectly, and Mercury as well. So that's an interesting component about just almost like the receptiveness of the people to this configuration, right? It's like you're easily like comfortable with the fact that this is happening, or being comfortable in a sense of let's say, like, because comfortable isn't, it could normally be a word for a Taurus moon action, but now that I look closer, one of the defining features of going into this season is actually Venus in Scorpio, who's debilitated in her own right, is in that opposition to Uranus. So there is something about the quality of that Taurus moon that is a little disturbed, or just, a little shaken up, or not as sort of like rooted or grounded as normal.
But
Yeah.
the fact that the moon has is pretty familiar with that Uranian energy now. And haven't
You're
we
right.
seen that, the last few years, well, so, really since the Uranus went into Taurus, there's been disruption after disruption in society, and people are just kind of used to the new normal being something that's totally unpredictable. So,
Yeah.
in a way, it's nothing you don't worry too much about it. It's nothing you're not used to. Still might be a pain.
Yeah.
But what I do like about this ingress chart is that the moon is making a conjunction, approaching conjunction with Jupiter.
Yeah.
And even though Jupiter is retrograde, it is about to station direct soon after. So I think overall, like, we're going to be in good spirits about it. We just have to know that there's some shifts going on, and going on within the background too, because what I love about this ingress charts, of Capricorn every year, is seeing the dynamic between the Antisha of Sag and Capricorn. There's
Mm.
actually a lot going on in the background here that we might not see, and we're under this veil of Neptune. So an Antisha aspect is when planets are within two signs that show the same amount of light. And Cancer, Capricorn are at that point adjacent to each other where we see the equal amount of light being at 1 degree, say 1 degree of Sagittarius to say 29 degrees of Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah. So it's using that 0 degree of the cardinal points as the axis. So the condition there is that there's a secret alliance between two planets that's having that Antisha relationship. And so what we're seeing, especially just after this ingress, is that Mercury is going to make an Antisha with the Sun, and then the Mars will also make an Antisha with the Sun. So here I see strategic plans being formulated in the background.
Mm.
And I think, whilst this can be a really great strong attribute, like, doing some planning is a good thing to do under this next quarter, I think. But really being smart about what your resources are, what your ideas and how they're going to be projected moving forward. Like, so this is a good quarter to do some long-term and short-term planning. One thing I think you need to be aware of is that these plans might, you really need to question yourself as to
Yeah.
what integrity you have around these plans, because with Mercury, being shifty like that, heading towards Mars and Neptune, I think it's a matter of integrity and
Yeah.
honesty that
Which
is the
is
question
always a big
here.
word for Capricorn, just in general, thinking about that integrity piece. But I think you're absolutely right. Like when you're talking about that, I heard in my head, it's like, make your plan, but plan to change your plans kind of thing, because there's something about the planning phase, which is natural for Capricorn season, right? We get into the shift of the season, especially here in the Northern Hemisphere when we're in the winter and we're in the dark and we're like, okay, well, what's that new year going to bring? Yeah, we get that that Antisha aspect, which has the planning, like you're saying, and sort of that behind the scenes motion. But how about that Neptune that's squaring it the whole time, that might not see things quite for what they are, or are making plans based on a dream? But we always know that dreams, which are wonderful things to have, we need our imagination in order to push forward and make wonderful things in life. But how it looks in the ideal is never how it looks in manifested form. So
absolutely, the hard
that,
work
yeah,
behind the
yeah,
dreams
right.
is emerging. And also be careful, the seeds that you sow. These plans will always have consequences. It might not be now, but being, the Capricorn season, we're always made aware of consequences. So honesty, integrity is a big theme, I feel, or to do for
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah. And being honest with people around you, but being honest with yourself, I think, that's
Absolutely.
Yes. So
Absolutely.
I feel like that is some sage advice there, Shu. So we will move on
Yeah.
from our ingress chart here to start looking at what's going down for the entirety of the season. And of course, one of the first things to happen is going to be that Mercury conjunction, which we were just alluding to. It'll happen on December 22nd on Friday, earlier in the morning here on the Pacific coast. And I'm trying to think of when like I have this information off the top of my head, but thinking about a Cazimi Mercury on a cardinal world point, it
Mm.
has some zhuzh to it, you
Doesn't
know?
it? It's very powerful. So what I feel with this Mercury is that it's actually not just changing signs, it's changing triplicities for the year. So we've had Mercury cycles all in
Yes.
the earth signs in 2023. And whilst this starts like on an earth sign, but it's actually making an entree into the fire signs for 2024. So here we see another kind of big shift happening. Mercury is shifting from, say, the idea of practicality, material drive, of the earth, towards next year of more aspirational
Yeah.
qualities, being inspired by our ideas and doing things that are more self-actualizing rather than survival mode. I think that's Mercury's message from 2023 to 2024. And this ingress chart with its Cazimi right on the day after the ingress is that kind of download, the goodbye to the earth and the hello to the fire. So we can all
Mm,
think of what we might want to do on that Cazimi, of how we're going to bring more fire energy into our lives. If you're a fire person, great, you're coming home. But for people that aren't fire orientated, say you might be very watery, how can you step into more confidence, or step out and express your inner thoughts and ideas outwardly a bit more? How can you inspire others? So I think that's a good Mercury Cazimi meditation to do on the solstice.
right. Yeah. No, I love that. It makes me think, especially after this cycle, like you said, of having these retrogrades happen in earth signs, and that survival energy, but also that preparation energy. It's more like, okay, well, we got to rework the realities, and the bits and pieces of the material, tangible world. And maybe that preparation and that planning and that moving of parts actually prepares us in a sense to then go through a cycle of expansion and risk taking and more spirit oriented impulses that are, especially with the North Node being in Aries and we're having eclipses in this Aries energy. It's like getting ducks in a row in order to like do the bold, do the
Mm.
spirit oriented thing. And
Yeah,
not, starve.
absolutely. Yeah, I think of the Maslow's, that Maslow's hierarchy, that
Oh,
triangle.
yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I feel like fire is right at that top part. I think they call it self-actualization. You've sorted out your living situation. You've got clothes and roof over your head and food on the table and things like that. You've been through all the steps, and now it's all about, how do I actually connect to spirit, like you say? And sometimes that is taking that risk. Um, me coming to America is that risk. Like, I'm just thinking that's how my fire
Yeah.
Mercury cycle might be playing out. And what you mentioned as well about the eclipses, it just reminded me that this this cardinal point of the ingress chart is really significant, because it is actually the first Capricorn solstice that's going to be at the bendings of the new
Yes.
eclipse cycle, and that's
Yeah.
big. I don't know whether we want to go into
We'll
that
get
now,
there.
or
We're going to
yeah.
get there. Yeah. So we'll put that in our pocket for a little bit later here, but that's a really good point to bring up, Shu, because that's a different flavor. It's a different
Absolutely.
flavor. So speaking of different flavors, so we have Mercury going on here, and it will almost immediately move into Sagittarius and make that shift in ability to come bound back to Sag, and it's about to get in a whirlwind. We're not quite there yet, but I'm just gonna the caveat: if you're going to travel during this holiday season,
Yes. You may want to have some backup plans.
Yes. Get your backup plans.
And it's the hot winds as well. Literally it could be hot winds, like hot, people that do astrometeorology might look at Mercury moving into Sag and say, oh, hot winds. But what does that mean in terms of, your everyday personal life? It could be, are you just over talking? Are you just like doing verbal diarrhea? That kind of hot wind. As well. So yeah, you might be able to see those manifestations.
Yeah, makes for a fascinating family holiday or
Right.
friends holiday, or however you choose to celebrate your time. It'll be lively and unpredictable. I think that is what we're saying here. But not
And
at
full
first.
of adventure.
Full of adventure. Whether you want it or not. It'll be
Exactly.
full of adventure. So we have the sun trading places with Mercury and getting ready to make that sextile with Saturn. So there is sort of that stabilizing force, that not so stabilizing force that we were talking about earlier. And I mean, to me, this is like a day or two before Christmas, if you celebrate such things, Christmas Eve. So just getting all the ducks in a row and trying to like make sure all the plans are in order and you've got all the food cooked and the gifts are under, however you do your thing. I think it's an interesting combination because it's basically the sun sextiling Saturn, and then on Christmas Day exactly, Venus is trining Neptune. So there's I kind of like that though. I mean, the Venus Neptune piece for a holiday. Just saying. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm actually going to have Christmas at Wilson's Prom, which is a beach in a national park. So that's very Venus Neptune, Yeah, but and in keeping with the Saturn in Pisces theme. But what I was going to add to the Saturn Sun sextile is that it's actually closing in on a whole entire Saturn cycle. So
Yes.
Saturn cycle is aging and it's old. So we might, this sun sextile, whilst it, wants to, be structured and planned and things like that, and it really will have that softer Saturn energy, I think. Maybe less rigidity involved, and yeah, knowing that in the background, we might feel comfortable, knowing that we have in our back pockets, a bit of a plan, but plans could also shift. So I think that's a nice, realistic, wise kind of Saturn sextile to the sun energy there, that we can tap into if we need. It's a subtle kind of Saturn, but it's nevertheless still there to help us navigate through chaos.
Yeah. Just a little chaos, no big deal.
Yeah.
I think to go back to what we were talking about earlier in the program, I think it will also help us be very flexible with what tradition looks like. And if tradition isn't, able to go off as planned, or there's interruptions or just different dynamics with people coming and going, and sort of that Venus Neptune flow, and having to be really flexible with just interaction. And maybe some people don't show up because they're sick, or like there's or you get extra people that you then take in out of the compassion of your heart that you weren't planning to have at your dinner table. That's okay.
Yeah.
So now we have an extra table, and when everybody else always sits at the main table, I'm just throwing ideas out there. But
yeah, well, like one example, a personal example, is that this year will be the first year that we've done Christmas on our own, and so this is really breaking away from tradition and the obligations, or, the felt obligations of the entire
Yes.
family and things like that. So this is what I mean about, the structures are crumbling, and we're kind of comfortable with that now. Like, we've never attempted it up until now. Like, we wouldn't have attempted it for, any earlier than this, in terms of
Yeah.
years. So I see that turning point, coming back to the eclipses being more intense, because it's now squared to the Aries Libra eclipses of the, that we've been having. So that's might have been one of the impetuses that made us make that decision about, going to the beach for
Yeah.
Christmas holiday, which you guys can't do in America.
I know. Well, in San Diego we can, but
Oh, you can, right? Okay, no wonder
probably,
you can grow tomatoes.
but well, maybe we wouldn't be splashing around in the water. Not there. Maybe in Florida, where I'm from, we could do that. But yeah, so we're
Right.
doing it differently, right? I think that's the gist of
Things
what
are
we're
different.
saying is we're doing it differently, and
Yep.
so
Get with the
why
new
not?
program.
Get with
Absolutely.
get with the new program. I like that. Get on the program,
Exactly.
Well, and that's the thing too about the energy, right? We got a Gemini moon on the lead up to Christmas there the day before. But that is a hot and dry Gemini moon, right? We are getting close to the full moon, which will happen the day after Christmas. So
Mhm.
there is an extra like to the energy to have that waxing gibbous phase sort of
Mhm.
envelop Christmas. So, and especially in Gemini, right? There's a lot of back and forth. And then of course we're going to have that Gemini moon. Look at the shoe. Oh my goodness. And this is for my time zone, right? So you might experience it a little bit differently, but essentially Christmas Day, we've got a Gemini moon that is going to oppose Mars, square Neptune, oppose Mercury retrograde. Sounds like a
Mm.
a recipe for something.
Yeah. A foot and mouth condition.
I know, right? I know. Well, this brings us back to what you were saying earlier and the hot winds blowing through. Like thinking
Hot
about,
winds.
people with like hot air, like speaking, like just not realizing what
Exactly.
you're saying and just things
Yep.
like slip out and,
Candles burning off it, and setting the place alight, or too
yeah,
much alcohol involved. But
burning
a
the turkey.
social, but nevertheless social, because it is a social moon.
Yes.
And
Active, super active.
very active. Yeah. And there could be very flexible, to what's going on. So if things go wrong, I think there wouldn't be an issue in overcoming and moving on and onto the, next best thing. I think,
Yeah,
it's
right.
so
This doesn't work out. All right.
mutable.
We're turning
Absolutely.
direction.
And,
Yeah.
and one of the greatest things I think about, Mars, Neptune, like the one greatest thing, it's not easy, but it is the idea of service, like a devotion
Yeah.
to helping those that might be less fortunate, or, saying your prayers, sending out energy to those, bringing people into the table that might not have anywhere to go at Christmas. So I think, we can use that Mars Neptune energy at Christmas, and the moon tapped into that, for those sorts of themes.
Yeah.
So, or donating to charity, your favorite charity. Mars Neptune can show a real strong dedication, focus, and devotion to a higher truth, or a higher, more spiritual use of your energy.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. It can
yeah.
go either way, right? We're talking about mutable signs here. We could be out there helping those in need, or we could be sticking our foot in our mouth and drinking too much. Which
Right.
one? Could be both. Who knows?
One could be the remediation for the other. So
I know,
just
right? You gotta
putting it
make
out
make
there.
up for it. That's funny.
Maybe we might propitiate this by making a donation to charity before
There
Christmas
you go.
Day.
That's the trick there. So Christmas Day, wait for it. That's all I gotta say. Wait for it. See how it turns out. But it's leading us to that full moon in Cancer, which is going to be on December 26th, which will be a Tuesday at 4:33 p.m. here Pacific time. And so we got that full moon in Cancer at 4 degrees and 58 minutes of Cancer, right on my Venus. So
Nice.
I had an epiphany a few years ago, Shu, about, I'm like, why does Christmas time just kind of always work out for me? Like Christmas
Ah.
just always just has a vibe. And it's because Christmas falls with the sun opposing my Venus. So every year, essentially. So there is this, yeah, it's always like this good vibe, lots of gifts, like coming together with
That's
other
great.
people. Even when I was single back in the day, I'd always seem to have like maybe like a partner that would happen around, that would give me a nice holiday. And then then Aquarius season and Valentine's Day would come around, and it'd be like my fourth house, and then everything would just go to pot. And then like, but there was always a sweet spot. And these were my younger years, but the sweet
And
spot.
no wonder you've got your Christmas tree up and loaded.
I
You're a
know. I'm
Christmas
like,
girl.
okay, get it here. I'm ready for this time. Like, yep, we are ready. Yeah, Christmas tree for those watching the video. I am prepared. Smells good. I was on
Yeah.
the game, got it in. Yeah.
Very organized.
Yeah.
No wonder you are Mrs. Claus there.
I need to get an outfit here. I do have a hat around here somewhere, but we're not going to do that. So let's talk about this
Yeah.
full moon. We got the moon in domicile, obviously. We got a full moon in Cancer. We got a strong moon. And the luminaries are making a trine. Oh, well, they're flowing with basically Saturn and Jupiter. And really, Saturn and Jupiter, because Jupiter is about to station direct in a few days' time, they're kind of getting to like the closest they'll be in a sextile again. But they won't obviously perfect another pass. But there's something to be said about their own relationship of like this, just the quality of the outer planets, or the more societal planets there. So we have those. And then obviously we have the Mercury retrograde Mars component squaring Neptune, because like I said, this is the second full moon in a row with Mercury squaring Neptune. Granted, this full moon is not ruled by Mercury, but it's still going to be quite the impact. So what's the thing that stands out most to you about this full moon?
Well, it's a nice moon. Obviously, it ticks all the boxes in terms of being in its own sign. It's got a lovely approaching, separating sextile to Jupiter, but then Jupiter's about to station direct.
It's applying. It's separating from Saturn, but applying to Jupiter.
Oh, sorry, what day are we looking at? I might not have the. Yes, sorry, I haven't got the exact chart. Right. I've just got on the day. So, that's really great. And I think this lunation has a good foundation. What I am, and I've mentioned it 3 times now, but I'm really interested to see how this goes, because it's the first, is it one of the first lunations? Yeah, the first lunation that is at the cross quarters of the eclipses. And I just always place a lot of importance on the bendings, as with many astrologers, because firstly, we know that the eclipses being in Aries and Libra for the next couple of, year or so, we're going to see society, as well as our personal society, make huge developments in the area of Libra and Aries, which is maybe, around personal relationships, our sense of identity and autonomy, in line with other people, that kind of thing. And where the eclipses are where the nodes are, and the nodes are very tied into karma, like our inherited family patterns or inherited ancestral patterns, whether it's ancestors of place or ancestors of blood or our ancestors of lineage, whatever that might be. Doesn't always need to just be family. And I think where the nodes are involved, we get pulled into the direction of following, what those signs do, But when planets are at the bendings, we have a very conscious decision-making point there, which is the furthest point away from where karma wants to default us to. And
Mm.
so this is the lunation where we might get huge illuminations of like where you stand emotionally, at least, and even from your sense of identity, where you stand, separated from family, separated from the bureaucracy, separated from anything that you feel entangled with. This is your illumination point, or your chance to make a really conscious decision around what it would take to fulfill you emotionally. And
Mm.
so it's got all the good things going for it. Jupiter stationing direct there is going to help you to integrate, and to find connection with your own spirit. But also Chiron moving direct as well is that
On
big
the full
statement of
moon.
absolutely
Yeah.
a statement about healing these wounds, like saying it's okay, like you are not your mother, you are not what your boss says you are, you're better than that, you are what you can make of your life is really up to you. And
Mm.
yeah, that takes courage, and that takes um you'll be required to take action. It's a cardinal full moon. So yeah, what do you think, Mel, on
I
that
mean,
whole
I think that's
bending point?
brilliant. I think it plays in perfectly with um the dynamic that we feel when we're in the holiday season for a couple of reasons, right? A lot of people are around family and friends and tradition and what people where people come from, and this sort of this retrospect, especially at the end of the year, of like who we are, where we've been, what we would like to be, what's the next year look like, and just having this turning point with yourself. Um, that, especially with Chiron stationing direct the day of the full moon, where it has that sort of turning point to address what is uncomfortable about being you, being
Mm,
you in relation to who you have been, who you could be, what it's going to take from more of like an assertive, self-directive, like, kind of only you can change your dynamic or your life, sort
mm,
of standpoint. So I'm like doubling down on what you said, because I think it's really potent. Um, and
mm,
having the moon be in this sweet space of like the stationing Jupiter and this kind of sextile, like, no, you know what? I've made peace with the Saturn component. I am going to the growth of Jupiter. And possibly, because that's a big thing too. If we think about the sort of what looks like a crunchy component with Mercury retrograde and Mars together and the square to Neptune, is that they're, Sag and Pisces, this is Jupiter ruled signs. So even though that's an interesting configuration in itself, there's sort of this like spiritualized nature that could heat something up fast to then dissolve into some sort of epiphany or understanding or
mm,
surrender into
mhm,
what the guiding spirit is asking you to step into going forward. And so you can have like a moment with it,
mhm.
release into it, and then sort of, yeah, just do what's necessary to move on. And maybe not even just in this particular moment, but that's the thing with full moons, right? They come to a head.
Yep.
And this is that coming to the head moment.
Yeah, coming to a head from the Capricorn new moon, that would have been July, around Cancer season last year.
Mm,
Where we're seeing the results of that. And don't forget this full moon being on the bendings of the Aries Libra eclipses. It reminds me of a situation where, where we can illuminate or come to realizations about how our personal relationships are a projection of our family traumas,
yes.
family karma. And this full moon is an opportunity to consciously stop projecting that, to unbind yourself from any of these psychological, emotional, spiritual entanglements that can give you this sense of a new slate. We don't have to be a prisoner to them anymore. We don't have to unconsciously default to these behaviors. So, and given that Jupiter and Chiron are stationing direct, I mean, Chiron, as much as it is the healing planet, it is also very much a planet of learning and growth and teaching and mentors, and combined with that Jupiter, also another significator for learning and development. This is a time of such immense growth that is potentially under the full moon's light that we can all tap into,
Yeah.
learning about ourselves, our emotions.
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking as you were talking, like the phrase of like coming home, coming home to yourself in whatever way that looks like, whether that is coming home and where you leave behind the conditioning or the scenarios that aren't you, or sometimes we leave behind like aspects of where we come from that we have cast aside, and those need to be revisited in some respect too. So it just is obviously going to depend on the person and in the situation, but I think we're going to learn a lot from this full moon. We're going to really feel it, and it'll be a blessing moving forward in just the kind of the oomph that it brings.
Yeah, it could be the situation you've come home from a family Christmas and you thought, gosh, you're doing all this reflection time at that full moon, and debriefing from the Christmas affairs.
Debriefing. Well, let's move on, because we have our next planetary action happening is essentially the perfection of that Mercury retrograde conjunction with Mars, basically the next day, December 27th. And then they kind of trade spaces with these squares to Neptune. So basically Tuesday through Thursday after Christmas, and sort of in the time where a lot of people travel. That's why I'm like just putting it out there. This is not like have backups, prepare to for things maybe to fall through or to have to wait, or for some people, maybe you want to just impulse, like get in the car and go drive somewhere that there wasn't a plan for either. And it's just kind of like, but people are going to be moving around. They're all going to be trying to get somewhere. And there's probably just going to be a little bit of some hiccups that could potentially happen. So
it's also an interesting thing that that Mars Mercury conjunction is exactly on the anticha of the sun on that day. So there's a very powerful alliance of those three planets happening there. When Mercury and Mars are together, I always think of The Art of War by Sun Tzu, being very strategic and clever and savvy about, how you want to strike attack, or how you want to defend, and so strategy could be your secret power on that day, particularly so in whatever house that falls into for you.
Yeah. And so to kind of come back to the Jupiter piece, right? Because simultaneously with that, we have the sun trining Jupiter at that time. And then Jupiter, like I stated earlier, is backing Mercury, Mars, Neptune, etc. So there's this actually Taurian, it's actually more grounded than we might think at first glance, as far as just the energy that supports it. That just made me literally think of a plane being grounded, but that's a whole other thing. I'm really stuck on this thing because that's been happening like a couple years in a row. Like I remember last year we had the Mercury retrograde during the holiday, and it that's when that whole meltdown of because it was connected with Pluto and stuff, of the airlines, especially Southwest. And it was like it was definitely a precursor to what Pluto and Aquarius is going to bring for air travel, and the reforms there. But anyways, I digress. But
I mean, that Mercury, Mars, Sun, and Tisha could play out like you are able to have done all the thinking beforehand to really back yourself in a situation. Like, your identity, what you stand for, who you are as a person. You might be able to present yourself in a way where you might not have felt confident enough to previously. But you've got all your backup points to prove that you're right, or something like that. That's that Mars Mercury being strategic with the sun. So that could play out that way too. So if
Yeah.
there's something that you need to speak up about, that could actually be a good day to, if you're mindful about it, it could be a good day to speak up about something that is worthwhile attesting for your own sense of self and identity.
Mm.
It has to be important enough. It can't be trivial.
Yeah. No
Based on
trivial.
principles. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. That's the first thing that came into my mind, is like, you have to, there's like print, and I'm already finding myself that there right now with the configuration with Mars now in Sagittarius when we're recording this. And I just had a conflict with my partner just recently, where the conflict was behind the principle of something.
Yeah.
But I also have Mars opposing my Mars right now, so it's like it's a hotbed for
it is. But that whole Jupiterian, it's all about principles. It's never about the detail. It's always about the bigger picture. What's the truth? Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
As it should be.
As it should be. So let's move on to Venus, because she's going to be doing some things here at the same time that week after Christmas. So basically, Venus is getting to the tail end of Scorpio, where she is going to sextile. So she's kind of got some moves here. She's going to sextile Pluto, I believe, on that Thursday the 28th. Then she's going to move into Sagittarius and pretty much just move on to make a square with Saturn, who, every planet that's gone into Sagittarius has been in this new, new configuration with getting that square to Saturn first thing. But that will be on actually New Year's Day. Right after Jupiter stations direct too. So what's your thoughts on sort of like the combo of Venus, Pluto, then Sagittarius, and then Saturn?
Yeah. Going too hard on New Year's Eve and regretting it on New Year's Day, perhaps.
Perhaps so. That could definitely, I know I was thinking about that too, with Jupiter just stationing as well. And like in such a sensual, like, let me take in all the all the good things in life. And then you're like,
greed and greed is definitely overconsumption.
more. Yeah, that's I could definitely see that. But I think it's also like to actually kind of piggyback real quick on just what you're saying about being able to get something out with the Mercury Mars combination. There is something about this sextile to Pluto that Venus makes at the end of the year, which is, in my mind, might be sort of like a little bit of a door opener or resolve to some serious tension that she's actually experiencing just recently before we are recording this with her square. She basically conjuncts the south nodes, squares Pluto, and then moves into her detriment of Scorpio. And we're living this real time right now, and I'm feeling it and I'm seeing it around me. And so I'm wondering if just her connection with Pluto here, especially since Pluto's, that's a big thing to think about. And I meant to preface that in the beginning of the program, is that the entirety of Capricorn season is the 29th degree of Pluto. So this, and then, because that's the fascinating thing about, which we'll get to at the end of the season, is the Pluto component. But there is sort of this, this pregnant Pluto at the end of Capricorn. And so any planet making a connection to it, and really, I think other than the moon, Venus is the only one, and then the sun at the very end. But anyways, I'm just thinking there's sort of this almost like a cathartic experience that then she can sort of be introduced to this expanded territory, but not without its limits, right? With the Saturn component.
Yeah, I think there's a level of urgency there too. I think this
Mm,
will be, yeah, just about a month or so, of a couple of weeks before Pluto then moves into the new sign. So there is this kind of like, oh, urgent, hang on a minute, we haven't sorted this out. And maybe that thing might be something hidden away, or something, a new discovery that comes, that emerges to your consciousness, that kind of thing. Because Venus is currently deep in the earth, dredging things up, as if, we're cleaning off the last few bits and pieces before Pluto moves on. So yeah, like you said, that cathartic nature could be a bit of a theme with that Venus Pluto, and then moving into, yeah, and then already being in detriment there, Venus. And yeah, having some of those uncomfortable conversations around, whether it's around finances, relationships, questioning yourself about your own material desires and needs. Yeah, it could bring up some last minute things, or some urgent kind of matters
yeah.
that yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
So just another caveat that there's something about like the end of this year, and as we get to the turning point, and what might actually make us a little bit more serious when we're making those resolutions, especially Venus squaring Saturn on the first of the year. There's just yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
an interesting time for just relating in general. I mean,
it
we're always
is.
relating to something, so just being able to be on the same page with someone else, with ourselves, there's a process that's happening in service to the future, right? Because she's moving into a Jupiter sign. Jupiter's about to go direct. There's the turning
Hmm.
point of progress and what that's going to look like.
Sure. And Venus, if you follow the Venus cycle, she's at that stage in the fourth month, or the fourth Venus moon cycle, that happens every month, and that's all based on the heart chakra.
Mm,
So it's the chakra that is about your general personal well-being. And so Venus being in Scorpio might be raising things that might be a little bit uncomfortable, but overall for the purpose of having your heart feel a bit lighter, after all of that, so
I
there's
like
not,
that.
the heart's not holding on to that stress anymore, and being able to purge it out.
I love that. All right, we're sticking with that. We're sticking with that. Moving on. Moving on, we've already stated that Jupiter is going direct on the 30th. And then we have Mercury going direct on January 1st, on the first day of the year. Let me get that up there. So yeah, so here we got Mercury it's stationing in a square to Neptune. Like that's what's
Yeah.
that's what's pretty much happening here during this whole kind of bookend period of a week, 2 weeks time, is we have this Mercury Neptune piece happening,
Mm.
which I know we've already kind of addressed and discussed, but I just want to let people know once again that is sort of the magnitude that surrounds the ending and the beginning of this year and the beginning of 2024. So there is
Absolutely.
that.
So that is the middle, is that the middle square of Mercury Neptune? Because it squares Neptune 3 times, right?
Yes. So we've been through two, and then we will so we'll station
Oh, it's the
direct and
last
then have
one.
the yeah. And so the last one doesn't actually happen until a week from, it'll
The
happen on
next,
the 8th. So
right.
it's sort of, yeah, so it's like the 26th, from basically the 26th through the 8th there. And well, and
Hmm.
then there's also on either side of that too, there
Yeah.
is that Mercury Neptune piece happening.
Yes. So the first time that Mercury squared Neptune was, in this instance, was on the 27th of November. So I think we're starting to get to a resolution of an issue that emerged for us on around the 27th of November with the Mercury Neptune square. So whether that might have been something related to travel, foggy mind, creativity, any of the, think back to what happened around that 27th of November when it made its first square. And I think about the 10th of Jan, I think that's when it makes its last square. That's going to be resolved. But Mercury being stationing sort of within orb of the
Yeah.
last two, it really wants to accentuate the whole the stresses of Neptune upon you, doesn't it? Like it's a
Well, and I feel like that's when it's going to be like kind of like usually we get extra Mercury retrograde like in the beginning. But if anything, Mercury retrograde, when it stations in like a trine aspect to Jupiter. So it's a different sort of, it's like there's a different form going on. It's more when it's about to emerge and goes direct that it feels extra Mercury retrograde to me, just in the sense of, being careful on the roads and, saying this, but having miscommunications where someone hears it differently or the letter gets lost in the mail or, what have you. There's more of the trickery that seems to come up with the emergence, I think, than maybe the beginning, but we'll see how that plays out. But I think just to be conscious of that, right? If just things feel a little off, and off doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's different than normal. Our perception is a little skewed and a little dreamy, and maybe we are really involved in sort of like an ideal viewpoint or, this vision that we hold that we want to manifest, especially Jupiter energy and Jupiter now going direct. But obviously Jupiter is going to take time to gain speed and get motion again. And so it can be a really dreamy piece in the beginning of the year that facilitates sort of that imagineering process for what will come, especially when we get to April, which is going to be such a dynamic period.
Yep. And yeah, Neptune, I guess, is want to make you surrender to thoughts that are a bit too, not quite on the mark, or pointing in different directions, ideas that are sort of going in the wrong way. We might have to surrender them.
Yeah. And then that's where the change, that's where the change comes, right? Mercury's direction. You're like, okay, that's can't think that way anymore. So that brings us to kind of the next turning point of the lunar cycle, when we have our last quarter in Libra, which is also an interesting turning point with just relationships, just in general. I feel like when we have last quarter in Libra, especially opposing Chiron, which we did talk about earlier there. So there is sort of that like bendings quality that you brought up earlier that could just definitely take place during this last quarter. And then obviously when we have the new moon, that's going to be exactly square the nodal axis coming up in a week's time. Yeah, there's just there's an extra like, what's the best way I can explain it? Just like it's like I feel like the image of being at the chiropractor and getting your back cracked back into alignment. Right. That's what I see.
Yeah, well, I guess we're going to have a moon conjunct South Node every month, I guess, in Libra. So for the Librans out there, it's, that real big pull towards, your spiritual truth. You're all undergoing some huge metamorphosis, over the next year and a bit into this year. But this is that idea of the moon being on that South Node, being pulled towards the default of your being, like the automaticness of your everyday life is what that South Node is, the safetiness and the comfort of being in your safe space, whether that safe space is constructive or productive or healthy for you. So that's some tendencies we may have to watch when on this third quarter. We might be reminded, of what I was saying before about the nodes being tied into that family karma or karma in general. When the moon reaches that South Node in this last quarter, and the last quarter is really about turning your back, you could consciously try and like turn your back from things that you might not want to hold on to, use that South Node energy to let go of some things. You can play your cards that way. But it is a huge processing time, a huge processing time that brings up a lot of complex emotions that of entanglement, of safety, security. Yeah. So, yeah, it could be very sort of still and reflective third quarter phase.
Yeah. Well, and it just dawned on me. It's like basically last quarter is on my partner's birthday. And then the next day we're going on a trip to go look at a place that we might get land at, maybe not, maybe so, but we're kind of like out to explore together. And like getting it all together, we're such independent people on our own. So it's always funny, like trying to get us on the same page and like, align. And so those sort of default comfort mechanisms for how to relate, especially, that's what I'm feeling like for my own personal experience there. So it'll be intriguing.
Well, we must share the same birthday, because is this the fourth? Oh, well, this is the fourth in London time. Is this the third for you?
This is the third. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, because that will be my solar return chart.
The third will be
the fourth, yeah.
Or the
my
fourth,
your third.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
yes,
One of my
maybe
best friends
of...
is born on the 4th, on January 4th. So that's and then
Right.
my grandma was born on January 5th. There's like a special. Well, that's the beauty of this for me, is like these are the people that their suns are conjunct my moon in the zodiac.
Right.
So I tend to gravitate towards people born between January 3rd and January 6th.
The birthday of champions.
Yes, it is. Bless you, Capricorns. Yeah. So, well, and speaking of Capricorn, that's pretty much the next thing to happen in the skies is we got this rowdy 29-degree Mars on Mars and Sagittarius, who's about to move over on January 4th into Capricorn. So we're getting a different flavor of Mars here. Mars is also, we are getting close to Mars out of the beams of the sun, which is which will be beneficial for Mars. So Mars gets kind of a boost at this point where it's getting away from the sun. It's now in its exaltation place. So Mars is a little more reliable. And
yes, it's very powerful. Yes, being that morning heliacal rise of Mars and its exaltation. I mean, that could bring on big spurts of energy, that's quite warlike too. We can't avoid, that nature of Mars, but also very strong energy available to us, motivation, drive, power that we can use towards something hopefully productive.
Well, and it also makes me think of where we kind of started off, Shu, when we were talking about the ingress of a Capricorn season and that the Mercury cazimi at this point, because, Mercury and Mars have been very intimate over there in Sagittarius, exchanging words, and then Mars goes on, and now it's at that point of the invisible point of the cazimi, and where it maybe can take action on sort of the planting of the seed that Mercury has transferred and had to work through, etc. So that could be a thing that happens as well.
Yeah,
and I'm here for it.
That's a great point. Yeah, great point. It's waking up that that special point that was imbued with that cazimi energy. Absolutely. It might also bring up, I'm just thinking, whatever plans were hatched at the cazimi, Mars moving over there might bring up some challenges or or an ordeal that you might need to overstep in order to, bring those plans to fruition. But I think that rising point of Mars on this day is also really powerful because of the synodic cycle that started at the Mars cazimi. I think it was around the 18th of November, could have been September. 17th for you.
Yeah, 17th. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially what was in view then is able to be more animated and brought out to
Yeah.
life, at this point. So there's a few things, the fact that it falls on that Kazemi degree too is, really interesting because it's almost, continuing that conversation with Mercury, which will then meet up with Mars again on the 27th, 26th of January. So
Mm,
they've still got this sort of relationship going on, um, Mars and Mercury.
yeah.
That's quite interesting. It's not laid to rest yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, wait for it. But I think we are going to have a shift in action energy and dynamic. It's almost like Mars kind of just comes online, like in a very practical, like, oh, now we
Yep.
can do this. And
Mhm.
it might be hard and things might be in the way, but we're motivated and we're ready. And, especially with Mars moving into Capricorn and then making a sextile with Saturn about 5 days later. So it's gradually moving to sextile the ruler, which we already talked about. It's a little messy, and we're doing this like a little creative
Mhm.
flair to how things get done in the not so direct way, but one that can be a little more imaginative and sort of work with what you got sort of energy.
Yeah, yeah. It's like if the art of war was the theme of Mercury and Mars, when Mars gets to that 0 degrees of Capricorn, it's like, yeah, well, the army's in there executing those strategic plans.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So what else is going on during this time? So basically we're settling down uh into the closing down phase of the lunar cycle. We have the sun who's going to be making us the square to Chiron, actually, so more Chironic energy coming in, but then a trine to Uranus here, and then the square to the nodes, which we'll see in the new moon. So the sun's got some little crunch and a little electricity behind it at the same time that Mercury is making that final square to Neptune on the
Mm.
8th. So just any thoughts on that kind of period of time before we move on to the new moon and kind of thinking about those closing down energies?
Yeah, I think, that sun being so closely tied into the nodes is another statement, about the consciousness that we have available to us now
Mm,
at this point in time to write your own, set your own path, that's free from what you thought you had to follow. And that can be a very healing thing, that, being Chiron on the North Node.
yeah.
So,
And the Uranian piece too, the Uranian energy has a maverick energy to it too, that's willing to,
mm,
go against the grain and wake up energy to be able to, sort of have this sort of like catalyst point that just changes
sure.
things, just the shift that takes place of the awareness and the identity. In a
Yeah.
very internal way, right? We still got Uranus retrograde, which won't go direct, I don't think, until sometime in January, late
Yeah.
January, or somewhere there. But the whole Jupiter Uranus piece, that's a
Yeah.
thing too, with all these planets in Capricorn that are going to be bridging the gap between the
Yeah.
Uranus. Yeah.
Yeah, that it's the truth and authenticity that's being kind of embedded on that sun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Seeking to be the most authentic, truthful person that you can be, and what changes do you need to make, like now, like, during this time, in order to be that person.
Right.
St-
Yeah.
yeah.
I like that. I like that. And then Mercury, that Neptune, that's like the whole perception of what the truth is. feels like it shimmers over and the mirages fade away, and then what the truth there is glimmers in from like the depths
Yeah.
of the soul. And
There might be that temptation to believe what you want to believe, and not step up to that challenge, I guess, not step up to the, because Mercury's in aversion to the sun. So it could be that idea of like, oh no, let me just pretend nothing's going on here. Let me just be in my sort of dreamy space that feels safe, that
yeah.
that feels like nothing's going. Yeah, that I am actually truthful. Yes, I'm already all of that. I don't need to change.
And then when Mercury gets back into Capricorn, that will all shift.
Yeah, full
So
business.
let us move forward to our new moon here on January 11th, 2024 at 3:57 a.m. here Pacific time. But we have that 20-degree new moon that is an exact square with the nodes, basically. We have, which we've been talking a lot about, so we know that's important. This is essentially the seeding cycle of that for the lunar phase period, and that the lunation is also trining Uranus. It's separating, but that impact is going to be there. We also have Saturn in Pisces ruling this lunation, and then Mars just came off that sextile with Saturn. And Mars and Jupiter in a flow too, because Mars is applying to Jupiter there exactly, I believe, on that day. And then Venus is trining Chiron, which is sort of like a background figure. But the meat of this is that the nodal action, and then I think Mars's piece with Saturn in Jupiter. It feels very supportive after being in this lunar phase with Sagittarius that was squaring Neptune, and we had to go through all the sort of, like there's more of a solidity of purpose and practicality and being able to move like pieces forward and plant like real seeds and like sort of know what you're doing because something has changed. That's like kind of like what I feel.
Yeah, it definitely does feel very action packed. Like, doesn't matter how hard the task is, that you're willing to take the next move, willing to make the next move. That it's interesting what you pointed out with the Mars sextile Saturn, sextile Jupiter. Like Mars and Jupiter being enshrined, to me, is a very entrepreneurial energy.
Yeah.
Like that risk taking, like what you mentioned with the fire sort of triplicities. It's the risk taking nature that Mars and Jupiter can offer. But Saturn being at the midpoint of those shows that, these risks are probably going to be calculated and grounded. So this could be a good time to make your move, like on maybe a long drawn out situation, because we've got that sun making that last aspect to Pluto there. To me, this feels like a broader issue. Like this is the whole Pluto in Capricorn issue. These skeletons in the closet that you've been dealing with for many years since Pluto's been in there, whether it's ancestral, whether it's personal relationships, work relationships. It's like this is the final straw. This is now where I take my stand, and this is, like the judges, what do you call it, the hammer thing that they bang down? What do you
The
call that
gavel
thing?
comes down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
The
Yeah,
gavel comes down. That's funny.
yeah, it kind of feels like that. You're willing to back yourself. We've got the sun at the bendings, the sun and moon at the bendings, saying, this is me as my conscious self. Mars strongly there saying, I'm standing up for myself. Jupiter saying that it's all about your principles and your own truth. And then there's that little Saturn there trying to keep all these egos in check. Keep trying to hold everyone together. But
doing its best, but not quite having the container to. And that's okay. I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the program and the the lessening of rigidity that might have kept that that momentum and progress from happening, right? Because maybe there aren't the same obligations or duties and have shifted, and now we're kind of flowing with different form. I also kind of got this sense of like when you were speaking of like now or never, like, okay, well, if we don't start now, when? It's like we got to do this. It might take a long time. It might take a lot of dedication and devotion. But we just have to start somewhere. And so why not now?
Yeah. It's the final nail in the coffin, I feel. The coffin being those skeletons that have been haunting you or that you've
That
been
have been
playing with.
keeping it from, the change from happening.
Yeah. So
The
it feels
shift.
like there is this long journey of self-discovery that, self-discovery through maybe encounters with the dark or maybe encounters with the systems that you find yourself in, whether that's family, whether it's bureaucracy, government, workplace, even socially, like friendships and politics there. Like it's almost making a statement there, and putting that final or urgent last chance, a last attempt to address something.
I guess we will see when we get there, won't we? We'll have to.
Yeah.
We'll have
And we will see at the Capricorn full moon as well how successful you were in all of this.
you mean in the summer?
Your summer next in 2024.
Yeah, you're like,
Yes.
your winter.
Yes.
That's funny. That's
So
how
we're
interesting.
that
just made me think of something, Shu. Like I just had a thought about just hemisphere switches and how there's more of a solar quality related to the northern hemisphere that aligns with like the zodiacal, trajectory of what spring and summer and fall winter look like, where in the southern hemisphere it's more reflected in those energies in the lunar aspect and the full moon of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, because then you get the full moons in. So here you are in winter, what would be my summer, but that full moon in Capricorn brings that the brightness of the that Capricorn energy and that winter sort of vibe to life. Anyways, just thinking out loud.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is that time frame. So it's almost like if you do decide to be somewhat decisive about something around this new moon, have that 6-month time frame in mind. That's what you're shooting for. It's not like, you're shooting for the next 30 days. Like you're thinking a little bit more long term. And because it is that very elongated sun, it is this whole pass, to be that maverick energy, to do what might not be tradition, to step away from like what the structure has told you to do all this time. So there's this sense of confidence, I think, that is reflected here with Mars in Capricorn as well.
Definitely getting the confidence vibe here. I think the confidence vibe is strong, and not in a way that's like overbearing because of the Saturn in Pisces. It's like a gentle confidence, but I like that. And so basically moving on from here, we get it's an interesting start because a couple days later we have Venus, who is going to make oh no, I'm a little ahead of myself. Retract that statement. What we have is Mercury actually moving back into Capricorn on the 13th. I have it here for the 14th, but on the 13th, Mercury's going to move back in. So now we got a robust Capricorn party happening here. And we also have the sun sextiling Neptune, which I think is a very interesting piece, Shu, just because of how many squares that we've been having to Neptune. So now we get a little like solar support in a practical way of like what this Neptune piece has looked like this whole time, at least from my end. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. Yeah,
that might be a nice just like how it's sextiled Saturn, it's also coming into close another Neptune cycle. again. So yeah, some level of cathartic Neptunian issues might come up, but also, that sextile can show just a nice, flexible flow in life.
Yeah.
Uh, Tapping into a creative flow with spirit and things like that could come up for that day.
Yeah. And especially
Yeah.
just that weekend of especially more later in the weekend, that kind of Sunday, early part of the week, Monday, we have the moon in Pisces. So it's an interesting actually lead up, Shu, because we get sort of that like, okay, well, let me situate with that Piscean, that Neptunian action. And then we move into a dynamic first quarter in Aries, just in the middle of the week, just a little bit later, as the sun gets really close to Pluto. And so it's a totally different vibe, going from a sun sextile with Neptune, some Pisces energy, and then just like kind of like a switch flips a little bit by midweek on the 17th. And and then Mercury is also trining Jupiter at that point, getting closer to Mars. And yeah, so I feel like this is a dynamic kick after a little bit of a dreamy hot second.
Yeah, that was a very transient, dreamy moment.
Yeah, it was
But
like, oh, and then you're like, ah.
yeah, look, I think this could be, well, obviously, like the continuation of, what we spoke about the new moon, maybe more of a stronger impetus towards tangible
Yeah.
action. Like we might have thought about it and decided what we were going to do at the new moon, and now we're actually doing it. And so we might start to see some, things in our environment that reflects what our thoughts were at the new moon.
Yeah.
Because
Like so the pressure is kind of on at that point, especially with it being backed by that, exalted Mars, and who's kind of been ready to go, right? Is building momentum in Capricorn. Mercury's kind of on that page. It feels very sort of like, I guess maybe I'm going to come back to the now or never sort of energy that I brought up during the seeding of the moon, where it's like, okay, well, where do we begin? What's the first step? What low hanging fruit can we pick or round up to make some sort of dynamic sort of shift, just enough to kind of get the ball rolling and that sense of momentum to piggyback off of. But so you got to start somewhere.
Absolutely. And, it's like if that risk-taking nature of that Mercury, Mars, Jupiter trine is still, fairly much there, but Mercury moving in on Mars is, it's like mentally getting your headspace there now. Like it's not just a pie in the sky thing.
And then Mercury's sextiling Saturn at the same time too. Exactly. So I really like this configuration for mid January around the 17th. It feels like it's kind of go time. We have a couple days later, we have Venus getting in that our last of the planets. Venus is always trailing behind everyone with her morning star phase now, but she is the last of the planets to make that square to Neptune, which could be nice. It's like you get some things done and then you're like, okay, I need to decompress a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, it's the time to smell the roses. I don't mind a Venus square Neptune. I quite
me
like
either.
it.
I'm down. I'm like, yeah, I'll kick my feet up.
Especially as a musician, you must love that.
Yeah, right. Get a little creative force, and this might be the day that I would have like a glass of wine, because I don't drink much or have any like, but I'd be like, you know what, I'll have a little bit. Why not? You only live once. We're just
it just softens everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, but it will be slightly kind of as a tangent. I
Exactly.
feel.
It's not the main storyline whatsoever. It's if anything, it's more of the brief release, because it's basically we have the bookend of the first quarter moon in Aries, and then the sun moving to make its last conjunction with Pluto ever in Capricorn in our lifetimes. So it is a bit of a reprieve within a rather intense period of time.
Absolutely. And I think depending on where that Neptune is in your chart compared to, say, that whole cardinal action is in your chart, might depend which way you go. Because that Neptune Venus could be a kind of that laziness, like, oh, yeah, I should
I
actually go and
know.
have that conversation, but I can't be bothered. Let's just pretend nothing's going on.
Yeah.
Or so if you've got, say, angular mutable signs, you might take that option because that Neptune Venus will be stronger for you, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. But if you're a cardinal, if you got those cardinal action, you're gonna be in the thick of it. And then that Venus and Neptune are gonna be a side note. And anybody that's Venus and Neptuning, you're gonna be like, what? Get your shit together.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
absolutely
not the time for that.
Yeah. Or there's a sense of indulgence, with Venus Neptune. So yeah, there could be a bit of an escape, a sneaky little escape route out of these more intense sort of situations, which could turn out good or bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget
It's
that
not a bad thing. Yeah.
No. Yeah. It might just be enough to pull you out of a sticky situation. Because the sun is very much edging in and definitely in orb of that conjunction with Pluto. Like you mentioned, it was the last one.
Yeah. So let's move to that because this is big. So that basically we're getting to the end of Capricorn season, and wow, it's got a special treat in store for us.
It does.
It does. So look at this Sun Pluto conjunction at 29 degrees and 59 minutes of Capricorn. Like you cannot get to any further in like it is the celestial timing on this just to like exhibit it down to an hour. So basically this conjunction, this is what happens during that day, is this very very intriguing Sun Pluto conjunction. Sun moves into Aquarius basically, less than an hour later. And then a few hours after that, we have Pluto. If you'll do it. Come on, Pluto. Move it along. How many hours do I got to do? Keep going. Pluto's like, there it is. And then Pluto moves into Aquarius on the same day. Basically, we have this energy. So Aquarius season is a beast in its own, but we are not here to talk about that. We're going to leave that for the next episode. But Shu, tell me what you think about this configuration and quality of time, January 20th, but also the cycle itself, this year-long cycle of
yeah. As much as it is about to start a new cycle, it's very much about the ending of a cycle.
Very much.
You couldn't get more ending orientated than this. This is like, talk about that final nail in the coffin. Like this is the nail.
This is the nail and the hammer at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the last bang of that hammer. Well, I mean, personally, I will be glad to see the back of this, having Capricorn planets and, it is a time for some really great acknowledgement, I think, for yourself. Like, I think it would be good to spend some time this day to really think about how you've come over the decade period, because it has been that long, about 14 years.
Yeah, since 2008. What has the journey looked like?
Yeah, is that 14 years? I can't do my maths. Maybe a bit
15 years. 15
or so years.
We're trying to do.
And yes, that's
even
a long
16,
time.
because I think it was like, I don't know. We'll have to
back and forth.
Actually,
something
now I gotta know now. Why
Right.
We have, there can't be, let's see. Okay, November 2008, June 2008. So the first entry into Capricorn was January 2008. So basically 16 years ago to the date of this final sun conjunction. So let's go back to our chart. So 16 years, pull it back. And so here we are.
Yeah. I mean, it is a long time. I mean, some people listening to your podcast might not even have that many years either side of that to reflect on too much. But I think it is, a story about our where we've come from, like as in our roots of our being, that has featured really strongly with that Pluto and Capricorn, and as well as the structure of our being, our family structure, how we manage ourselves, what is our executive functioning, and how that's sort of been through the big roller coaster over the last few years, especially in the last, since it got to the end, 10 degrees, I think, of Capricorn, where things really start to sort of amp up and get more urgent. So I think, it'd be good to set some time aside to really think about how far you've come and what have you renewed in all of that, because that's the gift that Pluto gives. Yes, it might put us through the ringer, but it gives us the gift of renewal and rejuvenation, that you literally have a new skin after all of this. Then, go and get yourself some new clothes, perhaps, to celebrate this. Saturn, ruler of Capricorn, rules, limitations in our skin. So our boundaries will have been shifted. Our skins will have been shifted. Have a think about that, because it is time to say goodbye to that old self.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, the sun is radiating in that Plutonian energy at its most extreme state in Capricorn, in whatever house that lies in your chart. So, take it all in, because it's been a journey. But like Shu said, that's the reward of Pluto, is it like strips away everything to get to the nugget, to get to the treasure, to get to the whole reason of the difficulty or the vulnerability or the bareness or the change. You gotta. And so so this is almost like extracting the treasure. It's like, as if you haven't yet, or you're just not aware of what that is, this could be a very enlightening period of just really tapping into what all that really meant in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then especially just in society in general, right? Thinking about Capricorn being the bones of society. This is like, this year is going to be intense with this final synodic cycle between the two, because it will exacerbate like all the, especially the power dynamics and the people in charge, because Pluto, the power, but also the light of the sun and the many kings and queens that rule this world. It'll be one for the books, let's say that.
Yeah, and it could be the fact that, government systems are losing power. They are on the gradual decline. As we all said when we saw Pluto move into Capricorn, back 16 years ago, that we knew, yes, bureaucracies and government systems were going to be in for it, and there is a big shift in power happening. And so, our monetary systems, for example, are going through a big shift, towards that digital currencies that they're trying to bring in. So I would say Pluto moving into Aquarius will be the new mark on that, a big push towards digital currencies. And this is the last attempt to the last attempt to, whether you're for it or against it.
To hold on to the old, where Pluto
Yeah.
loves to thrust us into the change. Not in a way that's always, fast the way that Uranus does, but it's slow and it's eroding and it's coming and you feel it and you can
Yeah.
fight it all you will, but you won't win.
Exactly. It's very toxic. It can be a very
It
toxic
can
energy.
be. It can be.
Yeah.
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 So
So,
take all
yeah.
that in for the last day of Capricorn season, because obviously everything that we're talking about has longer terms behind it. But there is that sense of, wow, look at where we've been, look at where we're going, feel the ending,
Mm.
take in the ending, take in the ending of the self. And as Shu said, to lean into the regeneration and the rebirth that all that experience has essentially afforded us. Because had we not gone through it, we wouldn't get the reward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, be kind to yourself. I mean, give yourself a pat on the back for
Right?
what you've been through. A lot of people have been through a hard few years and a hard decade. So yeah, it's been huge for society, Pluto going into Capricorn. It's one of the biggest, most destructive times of our short little lives, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it really has. It really has. Well, because that's the thing is like when you feel it on a tangible world, communal, societal, structural level, it's going to hit you the hardest, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're going to see it, you're going to feel it. What I find very
Absolutely.
interesting about just a wrap up note before we go to our one last word, what I
I
found
better start
interesting,
thinking.
yeah, start now. What I find interesting about this season, though, in the beginning and the end, is that we ingress with the moon in Taurus at 0 degrees, exactly trining the sun. And then we end with the sun Pluto conjunction and the moon in Taurus exactly trining so there's an interesting Taurus like bridge and how the moon helps us integrate these the beginning and the end of Capricorn season. So
Yeah, and maybe it's
thoughts.
the statement about the earth, that
Right.
because Pluto and Capricorn also brought in the big piece about sustainability. How are we going to sustain this earth? And I can't help but think that the moon has been trining it there, as to say, like, you know, well, I can't say your job is done. I don't think we've done a good job of it.
No, the job is just beginning. This is the crucial component, right? Because this is baked into that Sun Pluto synodic cycle. Is that 29-degree Taurus moon that also shows the urgency of the anaretic nature of these two earth
Absolutely.
signs. So
Yeah.
yeah.
As if to say, never forget about the earth, because
Yeah.
we will come and get you through volcanoes, through natural disasters, all that.
All that.
So,
This predatory earth. All right. Oh my goodness, Shu. We have done a bang up job, I think, for our Capricorn solstice season session here. So it wouldn't be Energetic Principles podcast if I didn't ask you if you had one word to describe Capricorn season this year, what would it be?
right. And it wouldn't be me answering this unless I say, can I have more than one word? um, I think it would be 2 words: conscious detangling, I think.
Oh.
Mm. I think we really
Mm-mm.
have the opportunity to disengage ourselves from our structures here. And I'm back to the eclipses, because this lunation is that first one of the cross angles of the eclipses. I think it's really important as a theme for the year. So make of it what you will, and let's see what happens in 6 months' time. or at the eclipses.
Oh yeah, well, I think we will definitely see it then. I think we will definitely. I don't think we have to wait that long. Well, the 6 months will give us the second effect of the eclipse, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Conscious detangling.
Yeah. What
I
would you
get
say?
that. I can feel that. Gosh. Let me gaze into the stars of my ceiling. I always look up when I'm thinking, like, even if I can't see the stars, I'm always looking up, like, someone's gonna help me. Help me.
Looking for God.
Spirit, help me. What is the word for Capricorn? Oh, that's a weird word. I got the word derail.
Right.
Which can really go a couple angles if you think about it. It's thinking about there's like a train on the track, especially with all the Mercury, all the Sagittarius, Mercury Mars business that we were talking about, the Plutonian business. I mean, sometimes it's good to derail
Might be that maverick energy.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Great.
and if you do get derailed, that's kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier about like dealing with the skeletons in the closet and unfinished business and like having to shift course to get in line with the long-term growth of what's happening here. So if you get a little derailed or you choose to derail or you take that train off that track, but you can do it with conscious detanglement essentially, right? Derailing sounds like you're so not in control, which can totally be the case, especially when Pluto's involved and Saturn and what have you.
Mercury retrograde going into Mars and Neptune.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not without its problems, I think, Capricorn season, but there's also lots of opportunities. And that brings me back to that whole Mars Mercury thing, that whole Chinese expression, I think, Weiji, where crisis opportunities actually come from crisis, that reframing of a problem to then create an opportunity. So that is also a big theme for this month, I think, if we can encapsulate what we've just said in the past, however long we've spoken for.
Absolutely. I'm here for it. All right, Shu. Well, I think we have come to our end point here. Where can people find you? What you got going on?
Well, I'm getting ready to teach another solar returns course with Kepler.
Nice.
I'm doing another 5-week course, which I do twice a year now. And that starts on January 20th. So there's early bird rates at the moment. So it's up for grabs on the Kepler website. I'll also be doing it in person talk. Can you believe it? I'm going to have to put some pants on for that.
Oh my goodness, pants.
So if you want to see my legs, come to the Victorian Astrologers Association. In the new year, I'll be doing a lecture on remediating the solar return chart. So looking at a solar return and how to make some remediations for that year specifically. Other than that, I've got some other talks coming up further along the way, which you can check on my website at intercycle.com, INTERPSYCLE. I also run a little thing that I've developed called the Third House Studio, which is lots of fun. We meet up once a month to do chart reading practice. And it's really great. We have been having lots of really good stuff come out of it. We've done sort of a trial 6-month thing, which is still going, but I'll be probably looking at doing a next intake next April to start for May. So if anyone's interested, say if you've done a course, a foundational course, and you still need a little help reading charts and to get you to that next stage, this is a really helpful, practical way to look at other people read charts as well as get airtime on how you can read live clients charts. So yeah, but we'll have to get you into the group, Mel, and to see how you read charts too at some stage.
Give me in.
Yeah,
I love reading charts. So give me a chart, I'll read that chart. It's so fascinating to see
Absolutely.
how everybody approaches it. Every astrologer is different. I mean, we share
Yeah,
similar principles, but how the mind works, right, is such a crucial component to dissecting and delineating. So, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So it's yeah, lots of fun. And so yeah, I guess the easiest is to sign up to my newsletter because that's where I'm most active. I've kind of not on social media too much anymore. So if you just go to intercycle.com/news, you'll be able to jump on the mailing list and just get the updates from there. That's probably the most reliable source of information from me. I'm very old school. I just go
I
by,
like old school. Well, you're definitely Saturn. You got
very sad.
you're very Saturn. So
Me and my hardwired headphones.
I love it. I love it. So, well, let's see.
Yeah.
What Saturn are you, Shu? Are you
In
are
Libra.
you Libra? Oh,
Yeah, I'm
look
an
at you,
exalted
exalted
Oh,
Saturn. Look at you.
yeah. Oh, and
Love it.
also, I'll be coming to meet you next year too,
That's
mid.
right. I'm gonna see
So
Shu's legs. It's gonna gonna
I'm coming to
happen.
San Diego. I'm
Uh,
coming to LA and Iowa. So if anyone's around, you know.
San Diego, LA, and Iowa. Not the combination that you're used to hearing in a row.
Yeah,
That's
all new
funny.
experiences for me, but I think I'm encapsulating this sort of Mercury and fire triplicity next year
Yeah.
and just taking that risk and I'm coming to America.
I can't wait. I can't wait to have you here. I'll be ready and raring.
Yeah, awesome.
So, all right. Well, I will, of course, share Shu's information over at energeticprinciples.com where you can find me. And you can actually find me. I mean, you can find me on Energetic Principles on Instagram, but I've been actually doing some more YouTube videos, doing live streams. I did one for Sagittarius season, as listeners of the podcast might have heard. But I'm starting to branch out and do shorter segments. I'm doing a Mercury retrograde one where this will come out after that live stream. So don't, don't expect to catch it live when you hear this. But my whole point of saying this is that I've created sort of like a fun little program that I'm going to do more lives on for more isolated transits, such as Mercury retrograde, certain ingresses, maybe a weekly thing. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. There's only so much time, and I'm sure Capricorn season will bring that right on home. But it's really fun. So if you want to be on alert for those, come on over and subscribe to me on YouTube if you're not already watching this here, because it'll tell you when I go live and all that jazz. Also, I have a newsletter too, the Heavenly Wind, you can sign up for, that goes out once a month. That has all the goodies and the details, and a different form of me writing versus me speaking, which is Shu and I were talking about earlier, is a whole nother narrative of way of expression. So check that out. And yeah, I think that's really all that I'm still working on Tarot of Her around in the corner with the book and the packaging and all that jazz. So I'm in that land right now. So stay tuned because I do have some teaching ideas coming up, and I'm just gonna tease, but I've been ruminating on a couple offerings that could come in 2024.
Oh, go that fire.
Oh, I know, right? Perfect. That'll be perfect. So what else? Now, if you would like to support this program, leave a comment, or if you're watching YouTube, like the video, subscribe. These are all things that help the algorithm say, hey, this is cool and you should watch this. Also with reviews, if you're listening to the podcast, especially on Apple Podcasts, leave a review, hopefully a favorable one, but the more reviews you have, the more people are like, oh, I want to listen to this. It's all mind trickery, right? It's all mind trickery. but we need help.
And what about
Engagement's
if you
good.
don't have an Apple podcast? What if you don't have Apple like I do?
Oh, well, if you're listening to it on Spotify or SoundCloud, or somewhere else it could be that I forget that I signed up for. I don't think you can rate them on Spotify. I don't think it works like that. SoundCloud, you can give a little heart, you can give a comment, but it's not, the beast. The beast is Apple. That's where and same with YouTube. The beast is YouTube. So those are the two. If you're gonna make it count, do it there. That's what that's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Okay. I got to get on Apple.
Yeah, you can. Oh well, yeah. Well, so anyways, what else? Sharing is caring. Spread the good word. Share this link or audio with a friend, so they know what's in store for Capricorn season. But really, I think that is it. We have said enough. And I really want to thank you, Shu, for joining me on the program again. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and pick your brain all the way across days and time zones. It's so much fun.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, have a Merry Christmas, everybody, if you celebrate that, and be safe. Don't go too hard on that Jupiter stationing New Year's.
Don't do it. Don't do it. But do enjoy yourself because that's what life is all about. So, yeah. All right, everyone. Well, happy solstice. Welcome to the last hurrah of 2023. And we will see you in the new year. And as always, may the stars be with you.